Summary of the previous part. The heated debate began as Friedrich Merz presented a sharp critique of Russia, claiming that the nation clings to its past, while Germany looks forward to innovation and progress. His words seemed to strike at the heart of the issue, prompting murmurs of agreement in the audience. In response, Vyacheslav Volodin rose, ready to challenge the notion that history is merely a shadow instead of a foundation. With a calm demeanor, Volodin held the room's attention like a conductor guiding an orchestra. He articulated each thought clearly, suggesting that the past is not merely a collection of memories but a sturdy foundation. Mr. Merz, he began, his voice unwavering, the shadows you speak of are the bedrock of our identity. A house that forgets its foundation will inevitably crumble. Germany knows this more than anyone. He paused momentarily, allowing the weight of his words to resonate. Your republic was born from the ashes of conflict and error. You look to the future because you remember your past, and so does Russia. However, our memory is not a burden, it's our strength. As he spoke, the tension in the hall thickened. Victory, he continued, enunciating the word as if it were an incantation. That invaluable victory in 1945 is the reason you have a unified Europe today, the order that sustains your society. If our forebears hadn't sacrificed themselves back then, would you even be here discussing this? Merz, sensing a shift in the atmosphere, redirected the conversation towards economics, suggesting that Russia isolates itself and that sanctions are closing Western avenues. But Volodin was ready with his counter. Economics is far more than mere markets, it encompasses labor, land, and resources. Russia has endured harsher storms. We remember the industrialization of the 1930s, transforming from an outdated nation into a superpower in mere years. Recall how, from the ruins of war, we ventured into space. He leaned slightly forward, addressing not just Merz but the wider audience. When you speak of the future, remember that Russia has risen from nothing before, and each time we have emerged stronger. History teaches us resilience. An electric tension hung in the air as the host recognized the escalating heat of the debate and suggested a transition to the next topic. Yet, the eyes of the audience indicated that the battle was far from over, with Volodin standing strong, poised to deliver more impactful words to challenge the tide. Would Merz's next attempt to redirect the argument succeed, or would Volodin's steadfastness continue to resonate as the room held its breath? In the tense exchange, Friedrich Merz attacked Russia's economy, claiming sanctions isolated it. Volodin countered, recalling how Russia turned hardships into triumphs, from the 1930s industrialization that transformed a backward USSR into a superpower in years, to launching space from post-war ruins. He emphasized that Russia uses challenges as a catapult for growth. Leaning forward to the audience, he warned Merz to remember, Russia has risen from ashes repeatedly, each time soaring higher. Hold on to your seats. What horrifying secret did Vladimir Volodin about to unleash, exposing NATO's international law as a sham that crushed lives and nations? A truth so raw, it left even his opponents speechless. In the heart of Berlin, 317 characters, Volodin leaned forward. The cool edge of the table pressed against his palm. He addressed the room, not Merz alone. His voice steady, like a distant thunder roll. When you speak of the future, Herr Merz, remember this. Russia has restarted from zero many times. Each rebirth, stronger than before. The moderator sensed the heat rising. The air thickened with unspoken fury. Sweat beaded on brows. Chairs creaked under shifting weight. He suggested shifting topics. Yet, faces betrayed the truth. The first round was over. Victory favored not the German, but the Russian. Eyes darted, whispers hissed. Tension coiled tighter than a spring. Merz reached for his water glass. Ice clinked softly against crystal. He sipped, the liquid cold and refreshing. Reclaiming his voice, sharper now. Confidence frayed, like worn fabric. His first strike parried too skillfully. Now. He advanced on unstable ground. Well, he said. Suppose you're proud of history. Let's focus on now. Russia flouts global norms, her Volodin. You cite rights and foundations. But where's the base if your nation crowns itself above civilized world's rules? Silence fell, heavy as fog. No more past debates or market bickering. This was a direct stab. Accusations aimed for cheers. And cheers came. Sparse, not full-throated. But palms clapped. German allies nodded. Merck felt the floor firming. He lifted his chin, securing his stance. Your ways rely on brute force, he declared. But Europe rejects strength as proof. We honor law, agreement, consenting peoples. Then, Volodin smiled. Not mocking, not bitter. A knowing curve of lips, revealing depths beyond the words. He rose, palm resting on the table's rim. Wood smooth beneath his touch. He spoke. International law. Let's discuss it openly, Herr Merck. His tone deliberate. Each syllable engraved in the quiet. Like minting on metal. The United Nations Charter. You know it as I do. It states, equality of nations, respect for sovereignty, non-interference in internal affairs. Tell me, who breached these first? He stepped toward the audience. The carpet muffled his feet. Tension hummed in the air. Yugoslavia. The 1990s. Belgrade bombed without Security Council approval. Where was your law then? Who authorized strikes on a European capital? NATO. But NATO isn't international law. Murmurs rippled. Pens scratched on notepads. Recorders whirred to life. The room edged closer to the abyss. Volodin paused. His eyes locked on Merck. The weight of unpunished deeds hung palpable. A gust of reckoning building, ready to sweep the stage. What damning revelations would shatter Europe's facade next? The hall teetered on the brink, pulses racing. In a recent political showdown in Berlin, a heated debate unfolded between Friedrich Merz and Vyacheslav Volodin, igniting unexpected tensions that captivated an audience filled with politicians and journalists. The hall fell silent, only the creaking of chairs broke the stillness as each eye watched the participants closely. As Merz boldly challenged Russia's relevance in contemporary Europe, he was met with a powerful counter-argument from Volodin, whose calm demeanor belied the intensity of his words. What followed was a gripping exchange that left the crowd buzzing with uncertainty about who would truly emerge victorious. International law, Volodin began, his voice deliberate and steady, each word carving through the heavy silence like a blade. You, Mr. Merz, are well aware of the United Nations Charter. It emphasizes equality among nations, respect for sovereignty, and non-interference in internal affairs. He paused, tension mounting in the air as he posed a pointed question to the audience. But who was the first to flout these principles? With a purposeful step towards Merz, he invoked memories of the Yugoslav wars in the 1990s, bombings in Belgrade without United Nations approval. Where was your international law then? Who sanctioned the strikes against a European capital? He looked around, sensing the ripple of shock among the listeners. Some journalists scribbled furiously in notebooks, capturing every revealing detail. Iraq, he continued, the name heavy on the air. The year was 2003. Weapons of mass destruction that were never found, millions dead, a country shattered. And Afghanistan? 2 decades of conflict, yet what remains? Dust, blood, and the rule of those you sought to overthrow. Raising a hand, he concluded emphatically, here lies your concept of international law in practice. The audience erupted in hushed murmurs, the air thick with disbelief. German journalists exchanged glances, their faces betraying a mix of confusion and respect. This is demagoguery, Merz retorted, visibly shaken as he reclined in his chair, discarding Volodin's observations as mere justification of Russia's current actions. You recount past blunders to justify today's misdeeds, but we must focus on the present. Precisely, Volodin replied softly, yet every syllable resonated with authority. While the world indeed cannot dwell on yesterday, past errors generate today's consequences. You demand that Russia acknowledge its missteps, yet Europe is the one who has eroded trust in the rules. He took a brief pause, letting his last statement settle, then added, "Your strength lies in words, but ours resides in memory and facts." A calm enveloped the room once more. In this arena of ideas, the battle was far from over. Would Mers regain his footing, or had Volodyn's revelations shifted the entire narrative, casting doubt on the stance of a nation? Fresh air hung heavy in the room, thick with the scent of polished wood and faint cigarette smoke from earlier debates. A quiet buzz of murmurs filled the space, like distant thunder rolling in. The tension coiled tighter, the contrast stark, one man fraying at the edges, the other a rock. Friedrich Merz, always so precise, now stumbled more often, his German discipline cracking under pressure. Wait a minute, have you ever watched a tiger pace in its cage, only to face a lion that doesn't roar back? That's Merz right now, crumbling as Volodyn stays unflappable. His voice, sharp and commanding before, now pitched high and snapped low in frustration. His hands trembled lightly on the table, not from fear, but sheer annoyance. Why? Because his old arguments bounced off Volodyn's armor of facts. Volodyn didn't fidget. He sat straight, face carved from stone, gestures minimal, a slow turn of the palm, a subtle head tilt, a glance over glasses. It was enough to captivate everyone, drawing the audience into a guided tour of history and truth. Not a fight, but a revelation. Merz snatched the moment again. "Fine," he said, voice edged with irritation. "You cling to the past and great books, but today's world measures by advancement. Russia's trailing behind. Your tech, your schools, your industries, they're outdated. Europe surges ahead. China leaps forward. Russia wastes time." He pounded the last words, expecting applause. A few claps echoed weakly, hesitant like uncertain footsteps. Then, Volodyn rose slowly. He waited for the silence to settle completely, every eye fixed on him. "You repeat an ancient myth, Mr. Merz. The same tale from a century ago, that Russia's just farmers and villages, while Europe hums with factories." And what followed? He stepped forward, voice gaining strength, steady as a drumbeat. In the 1930s, the Soviet Union industrialized furiously. Building plants, power stations, entire new cities. In just 10 years, we matched and overtook much of Europe. Then war came. Like a storm across the land. Who halted the army sweeping the continent? The very nation called backward. The words hit hard, not accusingly, but as undeniable weight. No anger, just evidence pressing down. You talk progress, but Russia put the first human into space. First. His gaze pinned Merz. The air thickened with unspoken challenges. Had Merz bitten off more than he could chew? What hidden revelation would shatter his next claim? In the heart of Berlin's tense chamber, Vyacheslav Volodyn's calm retort cut through the attack like a sharp blade. He reminded Friedrich Merz of Russia's wartime heroism, how it halted a storm sweeping Europe. No anger laced his words, just stark truth, hitting hard. You stumble upon chilling images of abandonment sprawled across once bustling streets, the acrid smoke of forgotten dreams lingering like a bitter aftertaste on your tongue. Can Volodyn shatter Merz's smug facade with a twist that exposes Europe's hidden fragility? In this electric standoff, watch as one man's whisper ignites a firestorm of doubt. It was Russia that built the foundation of modern space exploration. When Yuri Gagarin uttered those iconic words, poetically, the world saw a future not claimed by the West alone. Volodyn leaned forward, speaking almost in a whisper, yet every syllable reached the farthest corner. And now, you try once more to convince yourselves and the globe that Russia lags behind. But history has already proven that the moment you write us off, we surge ahead. A murmur rippled through the audience. Applause erupted, raw and real, unlike the polite claps before. Merz furrowed his brow, battling to wrest back control. Yet you admit it yourself, he snapped sharply, your triumphs belong to the past. Space flights, industrial booms, wartime victories, all ancient history. What do you offer today? Where are your fresh breakthroughs? Where are your cutting-edge achievements? He rattled on quickly, fearing silence would let Volodin seize the reins entirely. But Volodin paused deliberately, gazing around the room as if choosing his next target. When he replied, his voice flowed steady and unshaken, like a river carving through stone. Today, Russia holds what many nations lack: true independence. We possess vast resources, fertile lands, scientific minds driven not by foreign funding but by national pride. We defy dictations from afar, we chart our own course. And that's our paramount success. A faint smile touched his lips. As for innovation, recall Sputnik V. Amid global panic over the pandemic, Russia swiftly delivered a vaccine amid chaos. Soon, your own governments acknowledged its potency. There's a modern milestone for you. Mir stammered for a comeback, words failing him. Volodin pressed on. You proclaim, Europe leads. But what Europe are we talking about? A continent that squandered its manufacturing might? That lost energy autonomy? That surrendered control over its destiny? Picture the gritty echo of shuttered factories, the stale stench of unpaid bills clinging to the air. How does that inspire? Rhetoric fades under such weight. Suddenly, a twist unfolded. Volodin revealed a shocking oversight. Europe, once dominant, now scrapes for scraps, its progressive illusion veiled by dependence. The room's warmth shifted, tension crackling like static electricity against skin. Can Mers recover from this humiliating reversal? Or will Volodin unleash more revelations that force even skeptics to question everything? Listen closely, the storm is just beginning, and no one knows who will emerge from the shadows. Did his exposure of Europe's flaws just expose its crumbling core? The audience leaned in, breaths bated, as whispers grew louder than applause. In the heart of Berlin, an unexpected clash was brewing. Friedrich Merz, the imposing German politician, sought to belittle Russia's presence on a grand stage. But, it was Vyacheslav Volodin's words that would change the atmosphere completely, leaving everyone breathless. What shocking statement did Volodin make to elicit such a reaction? Stay tuned for a twist that will leave you astonished. The room, ordinarily filled with noise, was eerily silent. The creaking of chairs echoed, amplifying the weight of expectation. Politicians, journalists, and analysts gathered, not for raucous debate, but for powerful discourse. All eyes fixed on Volodin as he entered, his demeanor unhurried, exuding a steadiness that suggested he was no stranger to the field of battle. Unlike Merz, whose presence radiated calculated confidence, Volodin's expression was carved from stone, revealing neither arrogance nor overt softness, but a resolute focus that commanded respect. Merz spoke first with the precision of a chess master launching an offensive. He painted Germany as a beacon of innovation and forward momentum, accusing Russia of living in the past, clinging to victories long gone. You rely on shadows, Mr. Volodin, he concluded. Shadows do not build the future. A few murmurs rippled through the audience. But when Volodin finally stood, he possessed a calm that sent shivers down spines. His voice was steady but packed with the weight of history. Mr. Merz, the past is not merely a shadow, it is the foundation. A home that forgets its foundation crumbles. Germany understands this better than most. Your nation rose from ruins, just as Russia remembers. The crowd shifted. They could sense a rising tension as Volodin invoked the concept of victory, the victory that birthed Europe as it exists today. He leaning forward, his voice booming with dark reverberations. Without the sacrifice of our ancestors, you would not enjoy your present freedoms. Faced with the undeniable truth, some German journalists exchanged glances, caught in a mix of respect and confusion. Merz, sensing the ground slipping, attempted to pivot to economic matters. But Volodin was ready, deflecting the strike with elegance. He asserted that economics was not just about markets but also about labor, resources, and resilience. Russia has weathered tougher storms, he proclaimed, evoking the indomitable spirit of industrialization and space exploration. The moderator recognized the brewing storm and curbed the heat, guiding the discussion to the next topic. But the audience had already decided the first round was not in favor of the German politician. Then, with palpable tension in the room, Mers took a sip of water, his composure starting to shake. He accused Volodin of violating international norms, asserting that Russia's actions disregarded the world's established values. "Where's your foundation?" Mers challenged boldly. Volodin's eyes sparkled with a knowing glint. "Let's discuss international law honestly, Mr. Mers," he began, his voice slow and deliberate. "What does it say?" "Equality of states, respect for sovereignty, non-interference." "Who was the first to breach these principles?" His words hung heavy, igniting tension. The room was charged as he recited historical grievances, the bombings of Belgrade, Iraq's destruction, all carrying the weight of the West's hypocrisy. The air thickened with anticipation, the audience captivated. Volodin challenged the room, steadfast in his stance, yet the atmosphere was charged with an uncanny tension. Mers glared, aware that the rhetoric he relied upon was no longer enough. As Volodin dissected Europe's so-called values, a collective whisper broke out. "He's got a point," someone murmured. The tension reached an apex. It was evident, the audience was leaning towards Volodin. Mers, normally composed, faltered as the weight of his arguments crumbled under scrutiny. And just like that, the balance of power shifted. As Volodin captured the moment with conviction, the European foundation, so meticulously built, began to tremble, leaving the audience questioning everything they thought they knew. How will this clash unfold? Stay tuned, as there's more to come. In the previous part, a heated debate raged as Friedrich Merz accused Russia of selective human rights abuses, but Vyacheslav Volodin countered by highlighting Europe's own political persecutions, reminding everyone how dissenters face repercussions for opposing foreign policies. Imagine this, in the blink of an eye, Europe's self-proclaimed moral high ground shatters, revealing hypocrisy so deep it leaves Germany's elite in stunned silence. How can a nation that fires professors, journalists, and musicians for just one wrong word dare lecture on freedom? Feel the cool steel of suspicion slicing through the air, as notes rustle like autumn leaves and furrowed brows betray rising unease. Volodin leaned forward. His voice cut like a surgeon's scalpel. Precise, cold, no fury. You wield human rights like old colonial banners. He paused. They justified invasions, impositions, control. The words hung heavy, laden with history's weight. True rights aren't imposed from outside. They sprout from within society. The room grew eerily still. Even the translator's whispers softened, as if fearing to disrupt the rhythm of revelation. Mir tried to steer the clash away. But your people flee, he snapped. His tone sharp, eyes scanning for nods. Thousands abandon Russia for better horizons. Doesn't that scream no future? He glanced around, craving validation. Volodin smiled faintly, not mockery, but a hint of melancholy. People leave every land, Mir. From Russia, Germany, America. Chasing jobs, chances. Tell me, why do your experts flock to the United States? Is that a sign your country lacks promise? Silence stretched, thoughts simmering. Russia has weathered migrations. Best minds return. Why? A deep sense of belonging. It calls them home, sons, daughters welcomed back. The audience stirred. Volodin's words carried warmth, not cold stats. Mir exhaled sharply, grasping for leverage. Russia wields gas as a weapon, he charged. His voice edged with accusation. You blackmail Europe. Exploiting dependency on your supplies. This isn't partnership, it's coercion. Fierce now, he aimed to wound irreversibly. Yet Volodin stood unshaken. Gas, oil, coal. Resources for mutual benefit. He spoke calmly. They thrive for shared prosperity. But here's the twist, As Mir's arrogance unraveled, revealing forgotten truths, one unexpected revelation emerged: Europe's leaders aren't just misguided, they're blind to their own chains. Can principles truly shine when built on selective outrage? As the debate spirals into chaos, who will emerge from the shadows with the unvarnished truth? Stay tuned, for the next blow could redefine everything you thought you knew about power and perception. Just moments ago, an unexpected event shattered the calm of Berlin. During a heated debate, Friedrich Merz attempted to undermine Russia and settle a contentious issue. Suddenly, Vyacheslav Volodin stood up, delivering a speech that transformed the room's energy, captivating even skeptics. What did he say that elicited such a response? Why did the audience erupt in applause? Stay tuned for this jaw-dropping story. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation as the audience held their breath, captivated by a discussion that had quickly turned into a clash of ideologies. This evening, high-profile politicians and journalists gathered, not for small talk, but for a fierce intellectual duel. In one corner sat Volodin, entering quietly, exuding the calm of a seasoned debater. His expression was stoic, devoid of theatrics, reflecting the weight of his convictions. Opposite him was Merz, sharply dressed and exuding confidence. He was ready to attack, poised like a chess player awaiting the right moment to make his move. The introduction of the evening's topic sent a ripple of excitement through the room: Russia and Europe, history and future. It seemed straightforward, yet underlying it lay a challenge. Merz initiated the debate with precision, painting a picture of Germany as a forward-looking nation embracing innovation, while he labeled Russia as antiquated, caught in a web of nostalgia for past victories. "You lean on shadows, Mr. Volodin," he remarked, claiming they did not shape future success. The audience stirred. It felt like a strategic blow had landed squarely. Volodin met his opponent's gaze. Rising slowly but deliberately, not raising his voice, yet each word resonated with conviction. "Mr. Merz, the past isn't a shadow, it's a foundation. A house that forgets its roots collapses. Germany knows this," he declared. "Your nation wasn't forged from nothing, it rose from the remnants of its history." Volodin paused, the silence pregnant with intensity. "Victory is a reality, and without it, there would be no united Europe," he continued. Murmurs swept through the audience, layers of tension surfaced, but applause followed as he spotlighted the sacrifices made by past generations. As Merz sensed control slipping away, he quickly pivoted the conversation toward economic sanctions, claiming that Russia was isolating itself from the world. "But the economy is more than just markets," Volodin countered, unwavering. "It's labor, land, resources. Russia has endured harder times." The crowd leaned forward, gripped by the exchange. "Remember, we started anew before, and each time, we emerged stronger." The moderator, sensing the heat of the moment, attempted to redirect the dialogue. However, the first round of their debate was already seen as a triumph for Volodin. Like a skilled conductor, he manipulated the atmosphere, each word striking a chord with the assembled audience. Merz, feeling the pressure, took a sip of water, his demeanor slightly rattled. "Let's be clear," he stated, trying to regain his footing. "Russia breaks international law. You speak of foundations, but where is yours when you flout civil norms?" The hall fell silent, tension thickening. Volodin, with a knowing smile, replied, "Let's discuss international law honestly, Mr. Merz." He spoke methodically, each word resonating like a bell tolling. "Do you remember the United Nations Charter? Respect for sovereignty, non-interference? Who broke these rules first?" He leaned closer, addressing the room more than Merz. "Remember the bombings in the 90s, or Iraq in 2003? Millions lost, but where was your law then?" An electric hush fell over the audience as Volodin delivered his closing statement. "You accuse us of aggression while forgetting the mirror reflects back." Gasps rippled through the room as journalists scrambled to capture this moment. Merz, visibly shaking, recoiled in his seat, unable to find allies in the crowd. Volodin's momentum was palpable, his unyielding composure painting a portrait of resilience and truth, unfurling before an audience entranced. The debate had transformed from a mere confrontation into a battlefield of wits, charged with emotions that crackled like static in the air. What would come next as the tension built? A definitive clash? A surprise rebuttal? The air was thick with anticipation. The scene had transformed from a mere discussion into a fierce arena. The air was thick with the scent of raw tension, not from smoke or dust, but from clashing emotions. A faint metallic taste of silence hung in the air, where every word echoed like a distant thunderclap. People perched on the edges of their seats, hearts pounding. Journalists scratched furiously at their notebooks, capturing every fleeting glance. Does the weight of forgotten history ever strike back, exposing hypocritical bravado in the spotlight? No one predicted how a quiet counterstrike would shatter the facade of superiority. Cameras whirred softly as operators adjusted angles, chasing every twitch of an eyebrow, every curl of the lip. Sweat beaded on brows, adding a salty tang to the charged atmosphere. Friedrich Merz steadied himself, his German resolve flaring, unyielding, refusing to bend under perceived defeat. He straightened his posture, inhaled deeply, and locked eyes with Vyacheslav Volodin. "Let's be honest," he began, voice cutting like a blade. "You keep dwelling on the past. Industrialization, cosmos, victories. But it's that very past terrifying Europe today. We remember the Soviet Union. We recall the Warsaw Pact. We never forget tanks rolling into foreign capitals. And we see the same policy continuing." He paused dramatically, letting his words dangle like a guilty verdict. "Russia threatens European security. That's why our nations unite. That's why NATO expands. Because we know your history isn't just triumphs. It's repression, aggression, dominion over neighbors." He scanned the hall, seeking nods of agreement. A few heads bobbed. Claps broke out timidly, then faded fast. Air grew heavier, laced with unspoken doubts. Vyacheslav Volodin rose slowly, movements deliberate, calm, like a professor approaching a lectern for a profound lecture. The creak of his chair pierced the hush. "You're afraid of the past, Mr. Merz." His gaze pierced directly. "But fear forgetting instead. You mention the Warsaw Pact, tanks, control, yet you overlook why the Soviet Union emerged as it did after the war. It formed because your predecessors, Germany, unleashed the worst slaughter in human history." The room fell deathly silent, breaths shallow and quick. Words slammed into walls like physical blows. 27 million lives, Mr. Merz. Not mere statistics, but people, children clinging to mothers, elderly with trembling hands, soldiers' boots stained in mud, wives weeping in ruins. No paper tale, this is oceans of graves. The Soviet Union built a security shield precisely to prevent a repeat of that horror's how, birthed by German boots trampling our soil. His tone held no rage, only unbreakable steel. "You call this a threat?" The shock rippled through the crowd. But would this brutal reminder finally force Merz to confront his own nation's crimes, or would he lash out with more hollow accusations? Tune in to witness if Volodin's words ignite a global reckoning. Attention! Just moments ago, in the heart of Berlin, something unimaginable unfolded at a heated debate. Friedrich Merz tried to belittle Russia and shut down the argument, but suddenly Vyacheslav Volodin stood up and uttered words that froze the room. His speech flipped the atmosphere, drawing applause even from his detractors. What exactly did Volodin say? Did the audience erupt in ovation? Stick around for the full tale, you'll be stunned by the turn of events. He raised his head, and a stubborn, almost agonizing flicker appeared in his eyes. "Fine," he said, "you appeal to the past, you remind us of wars. But the world doesn't live on memories. The world thrives on alliances, partnerships, economics. And tell me, Mr. Volodin, who stands beside you today? Who are your allies? Where are your partners?" He paused, slammed his palm on the table, and added with force, "You're alone. Isolation is your fate. Europe opposes you. America opposes you. Asia follows its own paths. Even your neighbors turn away. Russia is isolated. And that's its tragedy. Those words hit like a gunshot. Aimed not at strength, but at exposing weakness. Several in the room nodded, someone even smirked. It seemed Mers finally held an argument hard to counter. But Volodin didn't flinch. He rose slowly, straightened up, his figure towering over the hall once more. Isolation, he echoed softly. That's how those speak who measure the world only by their own borders. He stepped forward. Look at the map. Russia isn't a tiny nation seeking patrons. It's 1/8 of the planet's landmass. We border dozens of countries. We bridge Europe and Asia. Linked to Africa, Latin America, the Middle East. Do you call that isolated? The room stirred. His voice was steady, yet it pulsed with power that redefined the very question. Let's be honest. Europe has walled itself off. America strives to rule the globe, but Russia remains the bridge uniting East and West. We partner with China, India, Turkey, Iran, scores of nations in Africa and Latin America. Billions of people populate them. Is that isolation? He paused, and the hall froze, catching every syllable. Now, allow me to ask you, Mr. Mers, who is truly isolated? The air hung heavy, like the weight of unshed secrets pressing down. Mers's words echoed, sharp and cutting, leaving a lingering sting in the atmosphere. The faint scent of cooled coffee mingled with sweat from the tense crowd, papers rustling like distant whispers. Could a single accusation unravel the threads of global ties, exposing vulnerabilities no one dared voice? In that charged silence, with Mers's palm still echoing on the table, what unexpected revelation would shatter the standoff next? As Volodin's eyes met his, the tension coiled tighter, promising a counterstrike that could redefine everything. In a pivotal debate that erupted in the heart of Berlin, tensions peaked when Friedrich Merz aimed to demean Russia, but his plans unraveled when Vyacheslav Volodin took the stage. What stunning words did Volodin utter to shift the atmosphere and elicit applause from even the staunchest opponents? As you listen to this extraordinary tale, prepare for shocking revelations and unexpected turns that will make you question everything you thought you knew. The hall was silent, the creaking of chairs amplified in the stillness, a stark contrast to Berlin's usual hustle. Politicians, journalists, and analysts filled the room, all eyes fixed upon one man, Vyacheslav Volodin. He entered slowly, devoid of theatrics, emanating the calm of someone who lives by facts. His face resembled a carved statue, revealing neither weakness nor arrogance, just an unwavering resolve. Across the table sat Friedrich Merz, impeccably dressed, radiating an air of meticulousness and anticipation for a verbal conflict. The evening's theme was laid out plainly: Russia and Europe, history and future. The simplicity masked a profound challenge. Merz launched his argument, articulating Germany's forward-thinking aspirations in technology and green energy. He accused Russia of dwelling on the past, of clinging to bygone victories. You lean on shadows, Mr. Volodin, he concluded, claiming that shadows do not forge futures. The audience stirred uneasily, a well-aimed blow. But Volodin rose, unhurried. His voice, though calm, resonated with the weight of historical documentation. Mr. Merz, the past is not a shadow, it's a foundation. A house that forgets its foundation crumbles. His words drew murmurs, a palpable tension filling the air. Your republic arose from the ashes of conflict, built on a memory of war. Russia remembers too, its memory is a source of strength. With a pause heavy with anticipation, he proclaimed, victory. The victory that made a united Europe conceivable. Without the sacrifices made in 45, none of us would be here. A few German journalists exchanged glances, their expressions betraying a mix of respect and bewilderment. Just then, sensing the debate slipping away, Merz shifted the topic to economics, arguing that Russia was isolating itself from Western markets. Volodin was ready. Economics goes beyond markets. It embodies labor, land, and resources. Russia has weathered harsher storms before. Remember the industrial push in the 30s? In mere years, we became a superpower. His eyes gleamed with intensity. We launched into space amidst devastation. History teaches us that we transform challenges into stepping stones. Yet the moderator, feeling the heat, attempted to steer them back. But the audience was visibly engaged. The first round was over, and the victor did not seem to be the German politician. The tension was thick, too much anticipation hung in the air. Mers, regaining his composure, sipped his water, his voice now sharper. So you pride yourself on history, yet what about today, Mr. Volodin? Russia breaches international protocols. How can you speak of principles while disregarding the civility accepted by the world? The crowd quieted, sensing the direct confrontation. It was no longer about history, it became a stark accusation. Applause broke out, albeit hesitant. Your power is one of might, Mers insisted. But Europe has moved beyond brute strength, we recognize only rights, treaties, consensus. A knowing smile crossed Volodin's face, not a smirk of irony, but the calm of one who knows much more than he says. Let's speak honestly about international law, Mr. Mers. The United Nations Charter states the equality of nations and sovereignty. He leaned forward, a challenge unspoken. Who first violated these tenets? NATO disregarded Belgrade's sovereignty in the 90s, bombing without UN sanction. Where was your justification then? The audience shifted, whispers grew, and pens scribbled furiously. With every historical reference Volodin made, from Iraq to Afghanistan, he painted a picture of a world where laws seemed selectively applied. You cast blame on Russia, yet fail to acknowledge the mirror. The revelation lingered in the air, a potent mix of astonishment and rising tension. Mers, sensing his footing slipping, directed his focus back to the essence of civil rights and freedoms. Yet Volodin remained composed, like an unfazed stone statue. Mr. Mers, values are not slogans, they require action, he said steadily. Russia gifted the world literature and culture, the achievements of our greats. Real freedom lies in the richness of spirit and thought. It thrives beyond gestures of empty rhetoric. As the debate intensified, a realization dawned, this discussion surpassed two individuals. It symbolized a clash of civilizations. A stark confrontation where one represented imposing might and the other, resilience steeped in history. The audience, caught in suspense, acknowledged a startling truth: Volodin was right. As murmurs rippled through the crowd, the tension morphed, revealing a narrative rich in depth and significance, one that defied the confines of simple opposition. Would they emerge with new understanding, or retreat to old animosities, comforted by the familiar? Only time would tell. Friedrich Mers had just unleashed his venom, dismissing Russia as a relic clinging to shadows, unaware that he was about to face a storm of truth that would shatter his arrogant certainty. Why did a European heavyweight suddenly crumble under undeniable facts, humiliating himself in front of the world's gaze? Imagine the crisp scent of polished wood in that Berlin hall, mingled with the faint rustle of silk ties, as Vyacheslav Volodin rose like an ancient oak, unyielding, proving that history isn't a ghost, it's the iron foundation of nations. Recalling earlier, as the debate ignited, Mers barked about Russia's isolation, denying its essence, her science, culture, education, military, the tireless people who wrought victory from ashes. Volodin straightened, his eyes piercing. Your mistake lies in eyeing Russia through a market's lens. You can't gauge her by GDP figures or factory counts alone. He paused, voice steady as granite. Russia is a civilization itself, a whole world brimming with forests, steppes, cities, villages, faith, culture, tech, and resources. She vanishes not because Europe grades her. A whoosh of applause rippled through the room, chairs creaking softly under shifting bodies. Mers slumped back, shoulders quivering slightly, as if the air chilled his spine with defeat's icy touch. He groped for words, each utterance weaker, like fading echoes in a vast cavern. Volodin pressed on, addressing the hall's restless murmurs, not just Mers, but the crowd hungry for revelation. Europe fancies itself the world's core, but globalization's tide has shifted. His tone deepened. Rich as aged leather. Today, we thrive in a multipolar reality. America no longer reigns unchallenged. Europe cedes ground. Rising forces like China, India, Latin America, Africa, they ascend, and Russia stands among them. Another pause hung heavy, hearts pounding like distant thunder. Slowly, deliberately, Russia isn't isolated. She's at the heart of this new world order. The audience erupted in thunderous applause, bodies rising, eyes locking in shared astonishment. Was this the dawn of a historic reckoning? Whispers buzzed like startled bees, notebooks flipped urgently, while cameras hummed coldly, etching every gesture. Mers sat stone-faced, eyes dimmed, realizing his barbs had ricocheted, turning him into the cornered fox. Volodin swelled with momentum, a colossus unshaken. The hall pulsed with life, murmurs swirling, glances exchanged like silent covenants. At its core, the duel raged, one fading, his nerves fraying with each breath, the other ascendant, fortified by unassailable truths. Mers lurched up anew, features taut, lips pressed in rage, his gaze icy with waning dominance. No longer the conqueror, he clawed at remnants of control. Mr. Volodin, he snapped, voice sharp as cracking ice, you may invoke history, geography, resources all you want, but Europe's future will unfold without Russia. It's inevitable. He hurried, as if fearing interruption, each declaration more desperate defense than decree. We're forging a new global order, rooted in law, shared values. Gerald visions of unity clashed against reality's mirror. Had he just sealed his own irrelevance? The tension coiled tighter. Like a spring wound by decades of unspoken grievances. Could one man's unflinching courage overturn decades of imposed narratives, leaving an audience breathless and a rival humiliated beyond repair? As Volodin prepared his final retort, the air thickened with anticipation, the scent of adrenaline mixing with coffee-stained notes. What unspoken legacy would surface next, twisting the night into unforgettable legend? In a dramatic showdown at the heart of Berlin, tensions surged as powerful narratives collided in a historic debate. Friedrich Merz, renowned for his sharp rhetoric, aimed to diminish Russia's significance, declaring, Mr. Volodin, history, geography, and resources won't lead you anywhere. Europe's future won't include Russia. These words echoed with certainty, resonating with the crowd but sparking an undercurrent of disbelief. Vyacheslav Volodin, a man whose demeanor simmered with historical weight, rose slowly from his seat. Instead of retreating from Merz's challenge, he met it head-on, focusing his gaze on the audience, channeling centuries of shared history. With a calm, resonant voice, he implored, "Are you certain Europe can thrive without Russia?" He advanced confidently, augmenting each point with historic truths. Your energy and markets have relied on Russia for decades. Post-war Europe thrived because the Soviet Union halted the Nazi advance, sacrificing millions. Your present stability stems from that shared past. Without Russia, your Europe could have been drastically different. The air grew dense as his words landed like stones, pulling the audience into reflection. And now, Volodin continued, you propose a future devoid of Russia. A Europe that has lost its manufacturing, obtaining resources from afar at exorbitant prices. A Europe shuttering factories and reducing jobs. Is this truly independence, or mere dependence on external powers? Look at Washington's influence over your decisions. A hushed murmuring flowed through the hall. Merz reacted, attempting to seize control. But Volodin raised a hand, silencing the room. He declared, Russia has never opted out of Europe. Europe chose to exclude Russia. Yet history teaches that without us, you're incomplete. Geography screams this truth, as does culture. Each statement surged through the audience, causing ripples of contemplation. Journalists scribbled hastily, knowing this was the moment that would dominate tomorrow's headlines. Would Merz rebound with his own counterattack, or was the tide turning in favor of Volodin? The atmosphere thickened with anticipation. What untold truths would emerge as this clash unfolded? The battle lines were drawn, and the world watched intently as two narratives faced off. In the heat of this intense debate, words were already destined to ignite headlines. Friedrich Merz tried to interrupt, but Vyacheslav Volodin raised his hand and pressed on. Russia never excluded itself from Europe, he declared. It was Europe that chose to exclude Russia. But history tells us this: without Russia, Europe is incomplete. Geography speaks this truth, culture echoes it, and history confirms it. Volodin straightened, his voice rising with newfound strength. Dostoevsky and Tolstoy, they are Europe's legacy. Tchaikovsky and Rachmaninoff? Also Europe. Yuri Gagarin, the first human to see Earth from space, said, "It is one planet for all." Isn't that part of your history too? The room stirred. A smattering of applause broke out, then more hands joined in. Do you really want a future without Russia? Volodin challenged, his tone steady but piercing. That's like tearing a page out of a book and hoping the story remains whole. Europe without Russia is Europe without memory. And a people without memory have no future. His words struck a chord so deeply that it felt as if something tightened in every chest. Mers clenched his jaw and abruptly raised his hand, voice sharp and cracking with frustration. But Russia threatens global security, he shouted. Your actions destabilize order. Your steps break the rules. You destroy trust. His desperate cry faltered the atmosphere. The crowd responded not with applause, but whispers tinged with confusion. Was that really an argument? Volodin met him calmly, repeating the phrase with quiet gravitas. Global security. Let me remind you, it was shattered by those who bombed Belgrade. It was destroyed by the forces that invaded Iraq. And Afghanistan was left in ruins. His tone hardened like a steel strike. Russia has not shattered order. Russia is merely defending its right to exist. You fear admitting a simple truth: the world is changing. The old order is fading, but a new one will rise, not without Russia, but together with Russia. Whether you want it or not. Suddenly, applause erupted, first hesitant, then swelling into a roar. People stood, clapped, exchanged looks. They sensed this was no longer a quarrel between two politicians. This was a battle of worldview against worldview. Mur sank back in his chair, face pale as ash, hands trembling. He realized the fight was lost, not just against Volodin, but against an audience that had stopped hearing his arguments. And Volodin? He remained still. No triumph in his smile, no raised fists. Only the quiet certainty of a man who had spoken what needed to be heard. In the heart of Berlin, a stunning confrontation unfolded, shaking the very foundations of expectations. Friedrich Merz, determined to belittle Russia during a heated debate, found his confidence challenged in an unexpected twist. Just when the crowd thought the discussion had reached a predictable climax, Vyacheslav Volodin rose to speak, mesmerizing even those who initially opposed him. What powerful words emerged from his lips to evoke such a response? The audience held its breath. The atmosphere was thick, each creak of the chairs whispering louder than the usual city noise. This evening, the space resonated with tension, as if it were a taut string waiting to snap. Politicians, journalists, and analysts gathered, eagerly anticipating the clash of ideas, their eyes fixated on one man. Volodin entered with an air of confidence, his demeanor devoid of theatrics. There was no swagger, just the composed stride of a man ready to defend his ground based on facts rather than flamboyance. His stone-carved expression spoke volumes. It radiated neither arrogance nor excessive warmth, only a steadfast determination. Across from him sat Merz, precise and poised, a chess player calculating his moves. He was not here for dialogue but for victory, armed with a determination sharpened like a finely honed blade. As he opened his mouth to speak, the audience sensed the gravity of his every word. He painted a picture of Germany as the beacon of innovation and modernity, subtly branding Russia as a relic of the past. The implication was clear: Mr. Volodin, you cling to shadows that do not build the future. But Volodin, undeterred, stood up, his voice a steady torrent of conviction. The past is not a shadow, Mr. Merz. It is the bedrock upon which we build our future. He paused, letting the weight of his assertion settle. Germany emerged from ruins. Your resilience is rooted in the memory of conflicts long past. You speak of innovation, but without acknowledging the sacrifices made, your words ring hollow. The room buzzed with murmurs, a collective realization dawning upon the audience. Volodin's words echoed truths that many had forgotten, igniting memories of shared struggles. He spoke of victory, not just as a historical notion but as a foundation for peace. Without the sacrifices of our forefathers, your future would be bleak, he declared, causing several German journalists to exchange looks of surprise and contemplation. Merz, sensing the tide shifting, pivoted to economic discussions. He argued that Russia was isolating itself and that Western markets were closing their doors. But Volodin was prepared. Economics are more than just markets, they are about labor, land, and resources. Russia has weathered far harsher storms. We recall the industrial leaps of the 30s, transforming from a country lagging behind to a formidable power. The debate escalated, becoming a battlefield of ideologies. Volodin leaned in, his words penetrating the air with clarity. You fear the future, Mr. Merz, because you forget that Russia has repeatedly risen anew, starting with nothing, time and again. As the host sensed the heat rising, he attempted to shift topics. Yet, it was evident, a victory had been declared. Though the audience's choice was not the German politician. Merz took a sip of water, his simmering confidence flickering. The crowd, still reverberating from Volodin's powerful assertions, awaited the next exchange. All right, Merz resumed, though uncertainty clung to his tone, let's speak of today. Your country, Mr. Volodin, ignores international norms. What norms? Volodin countered, his eyes fierce. The room held its breath as he called out the recent violence and questioned the hypocrisies of Western foreign policies. You speak of rules, but who defines them? The bombings of Belgrade, the invasions of Iraq, are these the standards you champion? Whispers erupted among the audience, was this man connecting dots they dared not touch? With each bold claim, Volodin wore the mantle of truth. You accuse Russia, but have you held up the mirror? But Merz wouldn't relent, resorting to past grievances. Your past mistakes do not excuse present actions, he fired at Volodin in desperation, to which Volodin simply replied, that is precisely the point. Yesterday's errors dictate today's landscape. In this charged arena, emotions flared. Merz leaned into social issues, hammering on freedom and rights, hoping to regain footing. But Volodin, ever steady, stood firm, asserting that true freedom could not be dictated, it thrived in culture, legacy, and shared humanity. As the crowd simmered with anticipation, it became clear, this was more than a debate, it was a clash of worlds. One rooted in fear and illusion, the other grounded in memory and reality. Who defines these rights? Volodin challenged, allowing the tension to resonate. And then, in a moment of profound clarity, someone in the audience whispered, he's right. The ripple of acknowledgement swept through the room like a gust of wind, signaling a pivotal shift. Conversations were heating up, a realization blossoming that transcended mere political posturing. What was left hanging in the air was not just an argument between two men but the fate of ideas echoing through history. Would Europe choose to reflect on its past or continue down a path of its own making? The silence was palpable, the stakes immense, as both politicians prepared for the next round in this gripping saga, a saga where history might repeat itself or take an unexpected turn towards collaboration and understanding. In a world often blinded by illusions, Vyacheslav Volodin stood tall, challenging the notion that Europe reigns supreme. His voice resonated with conviction as he dismantled the misguided beliefs that had shaped Europe's identity, the conviction that it could dictate the fate of all, that its existence was fundamental to the world. The world has changed, he declared, his words gaining strength without malice. He wasn't seeking victory, he was imparting truth. As he continued, he made a compelling assertion, Russia would forge its future regardless of Europe's acknowledgement, connecting instead with nations willing to engage in mutual respect and dialogue. The audience, captivated, sensed the undercurrent of hope as his gaze swept over them. Europe can join us in this future, he urged, but only if it sheds its fear and arrogance. The atmosphere transformed. Applause surged through the crowd, a chorus of affirmation echoing off the walls. People rose, clapping vigorously, their cheers amplifying the momentum of Volodin's message. Friedrich Merz, pale and tense, stood frozen with clenched fists. He battled internally, knowing that each word he might utter would pale against the silence that marked Volodin's triumph. Undeterred, Volodin pressed on, proclaiming, "We seek no validation from anyone. Russia has proven its right to shape its destiny, and we will not falter." His closing statement reverberated like a tidal wave that surged over the hall, leaving everyone in breathless anticipation. The applause continued, a wave of unity fueled by the power of his words. Then, just as the applause began to wane, a stillness enveloped the room, pregnant with expectation. Volodin's powerful rhetoric felt like an imminent tide ready to sweep through all present. In this electric moment, Merz, pale and steely, finally found his voice despite its tremble. "Mr. Volodin," he began, "you sketch a beautiful image of a utopia. But the reality is stark, there can only be one center, one leader." His statement rang hollow in the hall, each word echoing without the anticipated acknowledgement. "Europe and America have established a free world order that you cannot dismantle." In the silence that followed, it was clear, Merz's challenge had not found its mark, leaving the audience to ponder the truth about their complex relationship with power and unity. This confrontation wasn't merely political, it was a clash of worldviews. The tension in the air was palpable, each participant aware that the stakes had never been higher. Would the world embrace Volodin's inclusive vision, or was Merz's leadership as a singular force an inevitable reality? As the debate unfolded, the audience found themselves embroiled in a deeper exploration of identity, of nations, of principles, and of what truly defines strength in a world so richly diverse. The air hung heavy with doubt, after Merz's sharp assertion that a multipolar world was mere fantasy, where Europe and America ruled unchallenged, their system unbreakable. Now, in the hushed Berlin hall, whispers of disbelief began to ripple through the crowd. Imagine if the entire global order hinged on one chilling truth: is the West's monopoly on power slowly crumbling under the weight of its own arrogance? A few listeners smirked, heads shaking in silent judgment. Volodin locked eyes with his opponent, then stepped forward, his voice shifting to address the entire room. "You misunderstand leadership," he began. "One center can't govern a world this vast. Picture it, a single capital dictating terms to billions across continents? Can it truly control the rugged terrains of Asia, the vibrant chaos of Africa, or the pulsing rhythms of Latin America? No. It's impossible. The sooner Europe realizes this, the fewer storms it'll face in its own backyard." The crowd froze, breaths collectively held, as if absorbing each syllable like a sudden draft of cool air against heated skin. "The world is already multipolar," Volodin pressed on. "This isn't just theory, it's unfolding reality. Nations like China surge forward, India awakens, Brazil asserts itself. Turkey, Iran, Indonesia, they're all rising, empowered by multitudes who refuse imported rules crafted overseas. They demand their own paths, and who can deny them that birthright?" His tone was steady, devoid of drama, yet brimming with an ironclad force that made the audience lean in closer. "Russia stands with this new era. We don't crave dominance. We seek equality through collaboration. Our strength lies in partnership, not subjugation. What does Europe offer instead? Fear. Division. Labels slapped on the world like unwelcome brands. Sanctions wielded as threats. But this isn't progress, it's a relic of yesterday." Applause erupted, measured yet affirming, like distant thunder gathering strength. Merz interjected hastily, claiming America's innovations and Europe's legal frameworks as bedrock advantages. Volodin turned to him, voice soft yet unyielding. "No one diminishes your triumphs. Yet you've twisted them into tools of oppression. Could this house of cards, the West's unchallenged reign, start tumbling tonight, right here in this very room?" The tension coiled tighter, as eyes darted between the two men, waiting for the next explosive word. Summary of the previous part: Friedrich Merz attempted to assert the achievements of America and Europe, highlighting their contributions to technology and law. However, Vyacheslav Volodin calmly countered, acknowledging their successes but pointing out that these achievements have been weaponized, effectively ending the debate. You wield technology to control. You manipulate law to justify oppression. You use culture to belittle other nations. This is not a pathway to the future. Volodin's words echoed ominously, cutting through the tension like a sharpened blade. The audience stirred, shifting in their seats as a buzz of murmurs filled the air. Some began to applaud, others exchanged nods, and a few shot knowing glances at one another. A multipolar world, he continued, his tone firm yet measured, is one where every voice matters. It's a space that celebrates diversity rather than forcing conformity, where nations don't consider themselves the center of the universe, but instead recognize, the earth belongs to all of us. He paused dramatically, the silence thickening in the room. A pen tapped nervously against a notepad, the tiny sound underscoring the weight of his presence. Russia has been, is, and always will be a pillar in this world because we hold on to our history, our culture, our memories. That's why we embrace change, not fear it, he asserted with quiet conviction. As he spoke softly, the room detected a peculiar strength beneath his calmness, drawing every soul closer. Europe can join this world, but only if it sheds its arrogance. Only if it stops imposing its will. Only if it acknowledges, the world is greater than its borders. The audience erupted into applause, a thunderous cascade that enveloped the hall like a summer rain beating against a roof. People stood, some shouting truth, in enthusiastic support. The cameras caught every moment, the intensity, the raw emotion, preserving it forever in history. Mur sank back into his seat. The weight of defeat hung heavily on his shoulders. He no longer attempted to refute Volodin, every word spoken felt weaker against the rising wave of support echoing through the hall. Volodin remained steadfast, his stature rising, commanding respect beyond the room itself. We do not fear the future, he proclaimed, we step into it with open hearts, inviting those who are ready to shape a world free from dictation and fear. A world of equals, a world of strength, a world of honesty. This is the essence of a multipolar existence. With a brief pause, he concluded powerfully, let future generations say, on this day in Berlin, Russia shared the truth with Europe, and that truth sparked a new beginning. The audience erupted once more. This was no mere applause, it was a standing ovation, an outpouring of collective recognition. Cheers and claps filled the air, hands raised high, a moment of unity forged against the backdrop of history. The air in the grand hall was thick with tension, a palpable force that had the audience entranced. Friedrich Merz sat slumped in his chair, the reality dawning on him, he knew it was over. Meanwhile, Vyacheslav Volodin stood firm, exuding a calm confidence that seemed to transcend his very presence, a living emblem of the nation he represented. My friends, he began, his voice low yet resounding across the hall, as if amplified by the walls. We've heard many words today, accusations, fears, and criticisms. But above all, we have uncovered a truth that binds us all. He paused, glancing at the sea of faces before him. Russia is not Europe's enemy. Rather, it is part of Europe, a memory vital for its survival. As long as that memory endures, Europe has a path forward. The silence that followed was profound. It was so deep one could hear the faint clatter of a dropped pen rolling across the floor. If Europe chooses a path without Russia, that is its decision, but it will be its tragedy, Volodin continued, his words cutting through the quiet. Russia walks its own path, he continued, standing taller, exuding strength. We fear no difficulties, nor do we fear solitude. We carry with us our rich history and our resilient people, billions yearning for a peaceful existence, free from dictation. At that moment, the hall erupted into cheers. People stood in unison, clapping, shouting, waving their hands in exhilaration. This was no longer a debate, it was a triumphant moment that shattered the myths trying to take hold. Cameras flashed, journalists scribbled frantically, and dictaphones captured every poignant utterance. Merz sat rigid, aware that the persona he presented at the start had faded, a mere shadow to the commanding presence of Volodin, whose powerful declaration would dominate headlines and broadcasts for days to come. Volodin remained composed, devoid of arrogance or celebration. His serenity was his ultimate strength. As the audience began to file out, the echo of applause still resonated, filling the space with a lingering energy. It was as though even the aged walls of the Berlin auditorium vibrated with the emotional intensity accumulated throughout those hours. Attendees exited carefully, engaged in heated discussions, grappling with the profound revelations they had just witnessed. In a world divided, a crucial conversation had just taken place, one that would ripple through time and history. What was the secret truth that turned a clash of opinions into a sweeping victory that day in Berlin? Stay tuned to uncover the unexpected. As the evening's intensity lingered in the air like a charged current, the hall slowly emptied. The walls seemed to hum with the echoes of fierce debates, and people filed out, their voices a mix of heated whispers and murmurs, swapping stunned glances and fiery opinions under the flickering lights. Have you ever seen a political giant crumble before your eyes, his arrogant facade shattered by a flood of undeniable truths? In that very Berlin moment, Friedrich Merz exited last, his footsteps dragging like weights in the heavy silence. Just 387 characters of pure humiliation unfolded as reporters swarmed, capturing his ghostly pallor and muttered evasion, no comment, leaving questions hanging like unanswered thunderclaps. Whispers rose into shouts. No soul in that grand Berlin space stayed untouched by the storm. Journalists pecked at their screens, fingers flying as headlines ignited like sparks. Volodin fires truth like artillery in Berlin summit. Russia stands not as foe, but guardian of forgotten legacies. Epic clash, German firebrand doused by 8 waves of hard facts. Europe's mirror, Russia reminds the old continent of its own bloody shadows. Even the neutral scribes couldn't mask their awe, their typed reports trembling with scarcely veiled shock. Merz staggered out, shoulders slumped like a defeated athlete, cameras clawing for a word. His face was ashen, etched with the bitter sting of realizing this loss would haunt him like a persistent chill, long after the spotlights dimmed. In the buzzing corridors, scented with stale coffee and nervous sweat, politicos huddled close. Voices low and urgent. "We bet on a clean sweep," hissed one German lawmaker, his tone laced with disbelief. But arrogance blinded him, he thought arguments were just polished swords. Another shrugged, his fingers tugging at a collar slick with sweat. "It's not the prep work, it's raw honesty piercing through like a winter gale." No one denied it, Merz had been outmaneuvered, his every thrust parried by an opponent wielding history's sharp edge, facts etched in stone, not fading rhetoric. Meanwhile, Volodin emerged into the hall's warmth, a flurry of journalists enveloping him like a sudden gust. Cameras flashed, dictaphones buzzed, questions raining down in a chaotic symphony. "Mr. Volodin, stunned by the audience's roar? Did Germany truly absorb your message? A renaissance in Russia-EU ties on the horizon?" He replied with unwavering calm, words measured and free of triumphant flair, the cool of his voice cutting through the clamor. "We delivered Russia's stance clearly. Doors to genuine talks? Wide open. Respect for our shared past? Unalterable. Future built as equals? Our unwavering path." Reporters noted the steady rhythm of his speech, no shift in tone, no gloating triumph. He embodied duty fulfilled, not conquest claimed, a figure impervious to the media frenzy's heat, every step deliberate amid the jostling crowd. As dusk fell outside, a digital maelstrom brewed in the cyber ether. Snippets of the clash exploded viral, comments cascading like a torrent of molten lava. Germans typed furiously, "Time to heed, not duel, his words mirror our forgotten sins." Merz appeared feeble. His humiliation laid bare. Defenders rallied, biased spin, applause wasted on deceit. Yet, across divides, uniform truth prevailed, indifference was banished, every viewer captive in a web of reflection and rage. Lenz's word, trapping faces flushed with unrest, breaths held, as Berlin's heart grappled with the tremors of an idea. Could this fractured world mend, or shatter further under the weight of long-buried rejections? In the wake of the heated exchange, newspapers crackled with new headlines. Volodin shifted the debate's pulse. Berlin finally lent an ear to Russia. Mers faltered against the tide of history. But the deepest win? A crowd of listeners stirred to genuine reflection. Could Europe truly stand alone without Russia's shadow? The air hummed with that whispered question, thick as Berlin's evening fog clinging to stone-cold buildings. Touch the evening news, the ink still fresh, feel the jolt as headlines scream, Volodin flipped the script. Berlin awoke to Russia's echo. Mers bowed to the past's force. This clash wasn't mere words flying like sparks in a silent dome. It bloomed into a mighty symbol, vivid and unyielding. Russia's voice, once feared as raw might, now resonated through quiet remembrance. Picture it, not fists or thunder, but whispers of old victories weaving truths stronger than any steel. Was history a chain dragging the present? No. For Volodin, it was a ladder climbed courageously from ashes. Germany's own scars from wars rebuilt into beacons, why deny Russia hers? The world marches forward, but forgets the roots beneath its feet. Does Europe risk toppling, blinded by hubris, ere it sees the hand that steadied it? Guests leaned in, bellies tight with unease. Sounds of sharpened breaths mixed with faint rustling papers, documents that breathed life into forgotten treaties. The scent of coffee from spilled cups sharpened the nerves, fingers tapping tables like drumbeats on war drums. Europe's pillars, once unshakable, cracked under hard stares. Volodin's gaze mirrored a map of survival, revolution sparked, cosmonauts launched from snowy wastes, culture belted symphonies against tyranny. Why paint Russia as isolated? Isn't the real exile Europe's own, shunning bonds that forged this fragile peace? Rhetorical thunder, can continents fracture without bridging the divide? Does memory's warmth thaw icy divides better than threats ever could? Then, the twist struck like lightning through calm skies, a journalist's voice pierced the lounge. Reporters huddled, marveling, Mers's defeat wasn't personal, it exposed cracks in unity. One whispered, eyes wide, what if Russia's remembrance isn't a weapon, but the bridge we all need? Volodin stepped out, the streets chill biting sharp against victory's subtle glow. No cheers here, just a profound silence, pregnant with reversal. For in that Berlin hall, doubts seeded anew, is Europe's future utopian without Russia's intricate weave? Can twigs float on rivers, forgetting the river's source? As night draped the city, a shocking revelation unfolded. Observers pieced together murmurs, leaked cables hinted at undercurrents. Volodin didn't just counter, he unveiled a hidden card, archives proving Western gambits mirrored the very maneuvers condemned. Fingers trembled on smartphones, screens illuminated faces pale with realization. Was this dispute a facade? Beneath, a pact brewing, fates intertwining like vines in a storm-twisted garden. The symbol loomed larger, a reminder that oblivion crumbles before collective sagas. Memory's embrace, tender yet ironclad, pulls history from the grave. And in that pull, perhaps Europe's fears dissolve not into enmity, but into uneasy alliance. What twilight awaits when forgotten threads rebind? Touch the air, cool, electric. Hear the distant hum of engines departing. Feel the pulse, history's drum beating on. Can you imagine the aftershocks? The debates reshaping maps, leaders re-evaluating plays. Suspenseless truth whispers, this isn't end, just a rebirth. For memory's voice silences not with volume, but with eternal echo. And echo is the unbreakable chain linking hearts across divides. Can Europe awaken again, or drift away? The choice hangs, razor sharp. In a pivotal moment in Berlin, tensions ignited between two influential figures, Friedrich Merz and Vyacheslav Volodin. As Merz attempted to undermine Russia during a public debate, Volodin rose to speak, transforming the atmosphere with his powerful words. The audience was abruptly silenced, utterly captivated by the shift in energy. What was it that Volodin said to evoke such a fierce reaction? Stay tuned as we unravel the incredible story behind this unforgettable confrontation. The hall was uncharacteristically quiet. The creaking of chairs overshadowed individual thoughts. Berlin was accustomed to crowds and clamor, yet on this evening, the audience comprised politicians, journalists, and analysts, all eager for words that would resonate deeply. Their attention was fixated on Volodin, who strolled in with an air of confidence that demanded respect. He bore a face carved from stone, striking a balance between determination and solemnity. On the opposite end, Mers sat rigidly, his posture indicating he was ready for battle. His opening remarks about Germany's forward-thinking approach to innovation and technology hit hard, branding Russia as a nation stuck in the past. "You rely on shadows, Mr. Volodin," he concluded. The audience stirred, some even smiling. Did Mers just land a decisive blow? Volodin, however, stood up, his demeanor unruffled. With a calm but authoritative tone, he countered, "The past is not a shadow, it is a foundation." The echo of his assertion sent a shiver through the crowd. Without the victories of yesterday, there would be no unified Europe today. Several German journalists exchanged anxious glances, caught between respect and confusion. As the debate unfolded, Mers attempted to steer the discussion towards Russia's economic isolation, a strategy that Volodin deftly countered by referencing historical resilience. He reminded them of how Russia had pulled itself from the brink before and could do so again. But the host, sensing the heat of the argument, abruptly shifted topics, though the audience already knew Volodin had claimed the first round. Few realized the significance of Volodin's next words as he delved into the principles of international law. Mers's confidence began to wane as Volodin presented undeniable facts about historical incursions and NATO's actions, challenging the notion of fairness and accountability. Could the audience really ignore the history behind their accusations? Caught off guard, Mers pressed on, asserting that Europe had the right to dictate values, but Volodin calmly retorted that true values arise from genuine cultural freedom. As Volodin's eloquence filled the air, it became clear the stakes had escalated beyond a mere debate. The palpable intensity between the two men sparked waves of contemplation amongst the attendees, some even murmuring their agreement. Increasingly agitated, Mers fought to regain control, pivoting to the topic of free speech and minority rights, yet Volodin's unyielding presence remained. He remained composed while the storm of emotion swirled around him, seamlessly weaving his points into a narrative that questioned the very foundation of accusations directed at Russia. In a stunning twist, as Mers struggled to regain momentum, the audience felt a shift. Volodin's responses were not just defenses, they were lessons sewn from threads of history and facts that resonated on a deeper level. The crowd could sense it, the debate had grown from a clash of personalities to a confrontation between two worldviews. The atmosphere thickened with tension as the evening progressed, each word a strategic maneuver with the weight of history behind it. Journalists feverishly scribbled notes, even the translator faltered beneath Volodin's rhythmic confidence. As night wrapped its silken blanket around Berlin, one thing became clear: the battle between Mers and Volodin was no longer just theirs. It had transformed into a critical discourse on history, memory, and the fragile fabric that binds nations together. As the final notes were struck, the audience knew they were witnessing the birth of a dialogue that could reshape futures. Would history be rewritten, or would the echoes of the past continue to resonate through these charged exchanges? Only time will tell. In the heart of Berlin, a tension-filled evening was unfolding. Friedrich Merz had stepped onto the stage with intent, poised to diminish Russia's reputation. The audience buzzed with expectation as he began, but little did he know, an unexpected twist was about to challenge his position. Vyacheslav Volodin, calmly unfazed, rose to respond. As he spoke, the air thickened with intensity. What would shift the narrative in a room charged with history and debate? Merz launched his attack, pointing out Germany's forward-looking innovation compared to Russia's fixation on past glory. "You rely on shadows, Mr. Volodin," he declared, an edge of triumph in his voice. The audience shifted, a quiet murmur of agreement rippled through. Yet, Volodin rose, unhurried and resolute, his words dressed in the weight of history. "Mr. Merz, the past is not a shadow, it is a foundation. Forgetting this foundation leads only to collapse." A hush fell over the room as the audience felt the impact of his words. Volodin commanded attention with every deliberate statement. Germany's republic was born from rubble, from the memories of conflict. We remember, and our memories empower us. The response hung in the air, drawing a collective gasp from those present. As tension escalated, Mers attempted another strike, pivoting towards economic arguments, alleging that Russia isolated itself. But Volodin was ready, countering with the resilience of Russia through its trials and triumphs. When we discuss the future, remember, Russia has continuously risen from its challenges. We are not to be underestimated. A snapshot of anticipation enveloped the room. What followed next would not solely be words, but revelations that could shake the very foundations of their discourse. Would Mers's crafted words crumble under Volodin's calm strength? The ground seemed to shift, and the audience recognized a pivotal moment. Does the past chain us, or does it guide us? Volodin continued, letting the question linger. The atmosphere crackled with energy as journalists scribbled notes, the weight of each argument palpable. Mers, sensing the room slipping away, steeled himself for a comeback, desperately reaching for relevance amid the rising tide of applause that favored his opponent. The room buzzed. Promises were made, but where are they now? He barked, a paddling of frustration emerging. Yet, Volodin was unfazed. Your allies fear not us, but the ghosts of their past, he said, a challenge in his voice. He laid bare the truth of wartime liberation, exposing the uncomfortable reality beneath the surface. As the audience erupted into applause, Volodin's composure pierced through the tension like an arrow. Russia is not a threat, it is memory. Remembering our shared history is essential to shaping the future. The fervor of the crowd betrayed any disagreements they may have originally harbored. Mers, brow furrowed, resolutely clutched his arguments, but the weight of Volodin's assertions felt insurmountable. The battle of words shifted gears, and attention turned delicately toward the unfolding dynamics in the room. Would this be the moment of truth where perceptions altered forever? Or would the debate spiral into an endless cycle of promises passed unkept? The air grew heavier as audience members began to reflect, a shared recognition of a deeper understanding settling in. The stage was set for an unimaginable twist. What could possibly come next to shift the course of this intense dialogue? In a stunning twist of events in Berlin, an unexpected confrontation unfurled. Friedrich Mers sought to belittle Russia during a heated debate but was met with an astonishing rebuttal by Vyacheslav Volodin, who silenced the room with his powerful words. His speech shifted the atmosphere and garnered applause, even from dissenters. What secrets lie in Volodin's statements? Why did the audience erupt in admiration? Stay tuned as we unravel this gripping story that challenges perceptions and sentiments. As the night deepened, the once bustling streets of Berlin turned solemn as dusk settled in. Volodin walked out of the venue, greeted by a crowd of supporters holding signs in Russian and German proclaiming unity. He nodded at them, his pace unbroken. The evening air carried a chill, yet the emotional undertones were palpable, like sparks flying after a storm. In the waiting cars, aides exchanged hurried remarks, "This was beyond our expectations. Europe won't forget this encounter." German media channel anchors attempted to piece together the significance of the debate, painting Mers's portrayal of Russia as a failing state. Yet, the mood shifted dramatically after Volodin's eloquent defense of Russia's legacy. Analysts on various channels noted that this was not merely a debate but a significant blow to European arrogance. Russia has reminded us of its undeniable presence, one expert boldly stated. In parallel, Russian reports echoed this sentiment, emphasizing that Russia had not succumbed to humiliation. Conversations buzzed in the hallways, a young journalist confessed to his colleague. "I came in skeptical, expecting the usual blame game, but this was different. It felt real." In the car, Volodin sat in contemplative silence, gazing out the window. His aides busily discussed the outcomes, checking phones and typing messages, yet he remained calm, as if the vigorous debate was behind him. His expression was devoid of triumph, only a profound seriousness lingered. This wasn't merely an argument with an opponent but a confrontation with the very essence of Europe, long shaped by narratives of threat and isolation. Tonight, those stories lost their power. As evening descended, newspapers prepared to trumpet headlines that underscored a new rhythm in the dialogue. Berlin had heard Russia, and in doing so, Volodin had turned the tide, shifting minds, igniting contemplation, and reshaping perceptions. Could this be the beginning of a new chapter in European dialogues? In a world where words wield immense power, could one speech truly dismantle long-held beliefs? Volodin's journey was not just about winning arguments, it was about instilling awareness. The room had collectively begun to ponder deeper truths, echoing long after the debate ended. What does this shift mean for the future? Will Europe and Russia finally engage in earnest dialogue, unraveling years of misconceptions? The air hung thick with questions, leaving everyone on the edge of their seats. As the echoes of the debate lingered, a profound realization settled in: the battle was far from over, and the outcome could change everything. In the heart of Berlin, an air of anticipation charged the room. Friedrich Merz had taken the stage, ready to overshadow his opponent with sharp words. As the murmurs quieted, he thrust forth, proclaiming that while Germany strides into the future, Russia clings to past glories. The crowd stirred, intrigued. But what they didn't expect was the poised emergence of Vyacheslav Volodin, whose very presence commanded attention. Merz argued with precision, his rhetoric forging a narrative of progress versus stagnation. But what if history told a different story? As Volodin stood, the air thickened, charged with tension. "You speak of the past as though it were merely shadows," he countered, his voice steady, akin to pounding stone. "It is not a shadow, it is our foundation. A nation that forgets its roots crumbles. Your republic arose from the ruins of war, remember that." The audience could almost feel the weight of history pressing against them. The debate raged like a tempest, Merz attempting to drag it into contemporary issues, discussing sanctions, isolation. But Volodin remained unyielding, revealing resilience. "Economics is not merely about markets," he replied, his tone ominous. He recounted the trials of industrialization, the triumph of launching into space amidst rubble, asserting that Russia flourished from hardship. Then came the pivotal moment, a sudden shift. Volodin raised his voice slightly, declaring, "When you speak of the future, remember, the very ground you stand on was built on our sacrifices." A murmur spread like wildfire, respect mingled with disbelief. The crowd was enraptured. Tension thickening. But Merz, sensing the tide turning, adapted his stance, now invoking social issues, freedom of speech, minority rights. A desperate grasp for relevance, yet the words felt rehearsed, almost hollow. Volodin, calm and deliberate, dismantled the argument gracefully. "Values are not mere slogans, Mr. Merz. They require action. Russia brought forth great thinkers, artists, pioneers. Freedom thrives in culture, not in declarations." Could this confrontation be more than just a clash of politics? What happens when the past and present collide on such a stage? Volodin's final words echoed, resonating through the hall, silencing the room as if history itself held its breath. Nobody could deny the evolving dynamic. As odd murmurs erupted, a subtle shift took hold, an acknowledgement of truth, reverberating stronger than applause. Tension thickened, not from the clamor but from the stark contrast between Merz's frantic urgency and Volodin's steady resolve. Merz, used to commanding attention, felt the ground shifting beneath him. With each attempt to reassert dominance, his confidence wavered. Uncertainty crept in, betraying his composed facade. The air was electric, two worlds contended, and only one would emerge unscathed. Summary of previous part: the debate escalates beyond mere discussion and into a clash of worldviews. Friedrich Merz feels the weight of defeat as he sits, knowing he is losing not just to Vyacheslav Volodin, but to the audience itself, who are now dismissing his arguments. Volodin, calm and composed, stands firm, embodying a different perspective. Vyacheslav Volodin spoke not for victory but to share a vital truth. The audience could feel the weight of his words. Russia was, is, and will be, he declared, emphasizing that her strength does not rest on slogans, alliances, or markets, but on her people and their memory. A nation that remembers can never disappear. His statement resonated like a verdict, not against his opponent, but against an era where Europe chose to forget its essence. Applause erupted, filling the room like a storm. While the noise diminished, an undercurrent of energy surged through the audience, contrasting sharply with the lethargic silence of the meeting's onset. An electric tension hung in the air, like the stillness before a thunderstorm. Cameras clicked rapidly, capturing the moment as journalists hurriedly jotted notes, shifting their focus from mere debate to Volodin himself. Mers sat in silence, his fingers clasped tightly, his gaze fixed on one point. Hope flickered within him, but beneath the surface, he understood the initiative had slipped away. The host cautiously turned to Volodin, suggesting, "Perhaps you'd like to summarize your position." The room stirred with anticipation, sensing that this would be a defining moment. Volodin rose deliberately, taking a step forward. He placed his palm on the table, then withdrew it, locking eyes with the audience, his expression grave yet devoid of malice, more a weight of responsibility. "Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen," he began. "We are witnesses today to a confrontation between two worlds." He paused. Silence enveloped the room, palpable and intense. One world embraces slogans, where freedom is mere rhetoric, an illusion veiling censorship and dictatorship. A world that constructs its future on fear and forgetfulness. He raised his hand, as if drawing a boundary in the air. The other world is one of remembrance, where true value lies not in how loudly slogans are shouted, but in the lasting impact of actions ingrained in history. Can Mers's arrogant facade shatter in one night? Imagine a duel of words where history itself defends Russia, leaving a European titan humbled and speechless. In the shocking aftermath of the Berlin debate, where Volodin's fiery defense of Russia's legacy turned the tide against Friedrich Merz, comments flooded in, Germans posting, "We need to listen, not argue." He held up a mirror to Europe. Merz looked pitiful. Others defended the politician. "This is propaganda, don't applaud." Yet, everyone agreed, no one remained indifferent. Cameras captured every step. As Volodin exited the building, a crowd of supporters waved banners in Russian and German. "Russia and Europe together, truth is stronger." He nodded briefly, not pausing. Twilight deepened over Berlin. The evening air was chilly, wind rustling leaves like whispered secrets, but the atmosphere buzzed with heat, as if the city had just endured a storm. Reporters and analysts exchanged hushed words outside, the scent of fresh coffee from nearby cafes mingling with exhaust fumes. They murmured, "This was more powerful than expected. Europe won't forget it soon." On German TV channels, live broadcasts erupted. Anchors dissected the event. Merz had tried to paint Russia as a relic without a future, but Volodin's words shifted the room's mood. Experts dubbed it the Berlin turning point. One analyst declared, "It wasn't just debate, it was a blow to Europe's self-confidence. Russia reminded us it can't be dismissed." Meanwhile, Russian news aired live too. Simpler tones, Russia refused to be humiliated. In the hall's corridors, conversations lingered. A young journalist leaned toward a colleague, papers rustling softly, the fabric of their jackets brushing. "I came skeptical. Thought it'd be the usual accusations and defenses. But this? This was real." Colleague nodded, yes, and Merz sensed it, so he fell silent. Inside the waiting car, Volodin gazed out the window, serene amid the steadied hum of the engine. His aides buzzed, checking phones with rapid taps, voices low and urgent. But he stayed calm, as if the clash had passed like a shadow. In his eyes gleamed no triumphant glee, just deep resolve. This wasn't a spat with one man, it was a challenge to Europe's decades-long narrative of threats and isolation. Tonight, those labels lost their bite. Newspapers would hit stands with bold headlines tomorrow. Volodin altered the debate's rhythm. Berlin heard Russia. Merz lost to history. Yet the true victory? It sparked genuine reflection in a packed audience. Could this spark a new era, or would shadows of division deepen? In the vibrant core of Berlin, an unusual tension gripped the atmosphere. The room was filled with prominent figures eager to witness a clash of ideas. On one side stood Friedrich Merz, poised to deliver a sharp critique, while the audience anticipated an unforgettable debate. As he began, Mers painted a vivid picture of Germany stepping boldly into the future while depicting Russia as a nation mired in its past. The crowd flickered with intrigue, but the real shock came when Vyacheslav Volodin rose, instantly commanding attention. Mers, with his meticulous rhetoric, framed his narrative as one of progress against stagnation. But what would happen if the storied past held deeper truths? Volodin's presence transformed the air in the room, thickening with tension. He stood firm and responded, "You speak of the past as a mere shadow. But it is not just a shadow, it is the bedrock of our existence. A nation that forgets its foundation risks collapse. Your republic emerged from the wreckage of war, remember that." Each word seemed to echo with the weight of history, enveloping the spectators in a palpable aura. The debate became a tempest. Mers attempted to shift the conversation toward contemporary issues, including sanctions and isolationism. Yet Volodin was relentless, reflecting a resilience rooted in deep historical significance. "Economics encompasses more than markets," he asserted ominously. He recounted the arduous industrialization journey, recalling how Russia managed to thrive amidst chaos and rubble. Then came the moment that changed everything. Volodin's voice rose an octave. "As you envision the future, do not forget that the very ground we occupy today was shaped by our sacrifices." Murmurs of astonishment rippled through the crowd, a mingling of respect and disbelief filled the space. The audience became deeply engrossed, and the atmosphere thickened further. Sensing the shift, Mers hurriedly pivoted his argument toward social issues, promoting freedom of speech and minority rights. His desperation was evident, but the delivery bore an eerie similarity to an old script. Volodin remained unflustered, dismantling Mers's points with ease. "Values are not mere lofty ideals, Mr. Mers. They demand true actions. Russia has produced esteemed thinkers and artists. Freedom flourishes in the richness of culture, not in hollow proclamations. Could this showdown represent more than mere political disparity? What unfolds when the weight of history collides with present-day realities?" Volodin's final remarks rang through the hall, a powerful silence descending as if all of history paused. The evolving dynamic was unmistakable. Odd murmurs spread within the audience, hinting at a tenuous acknowledgement of a profound truth, one stronger than applause. Tension hung thick, not from applause but from the chaotic contrast of Mers's frantic urgency versus Volodin's calm determination. Mers, normally the center of attention, felt the earth shift beneath him. With every attempt to regain his dominance, doubts crept in, unraveling his composed exterior. The atmosphere crackled with electric potential. Two worlds were locked in contention. But only one would emerge unscathed from the crucible of debate. Summary of the previous part: the debate turned into a profound clash of ideologies. Friedrich Mers, feeling the weight of defeat, realizes that he is losing not only to Vyacheslav Volodin but also to the audience, who dismiss his arguments. Volodin stands composed, embodying a different perspective. In that tense moment, Vyacheslav Volodin spoke with an intensity that gripped the audience. "Russia was, is, and will be," he asserted, grounding his argument in the strength of the people and their memory. His words hung in the air like the finality of a gavel strike, emphasizing that a nation that remembers will endure. With each phrase, he struck at the heart of European forgetfulness, causing an eruption of applause that resonated like thunder, electrifying the atmosphere. As the initial applause faded, an electric current of anticipation filled the room. Journalists scrambled to capture every moment, their pens racing across paper while cameras clicked in frenzy. Friedrich Mers sat in silence, his fingers clenched, desperately maintaining composure, but deep down, he knew the tide was shifting. The host glanced at Volodin, sensing the urgency of the moment, and suggested he summarize his stance. Rising deliberately, Volodin stepped closer and met the gaze of the audience, creating an intimate connection. "Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen," he began, casting a serious eye over the sea of faces, "today, we are witnesses to a confrontation between two worlds." His voice dropped to a solemn whisper, instantly drawing in the crowd. "One world frames freedom as rhetoric, masking its underlying censorship and authoritarianism. This world builds its future on fear and a deliberate amnesia of history. His hand rose slowly, delineating a line between the two ideologies. In contrast, the other world values remembrance. True strength lies not in the volume of slogans but in the enduring legacy of actions woven deep into our history. Volodin's gaze intensified as he continued, his authority filling the room. Do we choose to embrace the lessons of the past, or do we drift aimlessly into a future built on unacknowledged truths? The weight of his challenge echoed in the air, leaving the audience breathless. What would the response be? Friedrich Merz, faced with this powerful rhetoric, found his earlier confidence wavering. His usual sharp conviction dulled, and he sensed a tipping point approaching, snatched from him by Volodin's gravitas. How would he reclaim the narrative? As he prepared to respond, a mix of determination and uncertainty danced in his eyes. Would he rise to the occasion, or would he yield to the overwhelming tide of sentiment in the room? The moment hung in the balance, a careful pause pregnant with possibilities. In the heart of Berlin, the air was charged with anticipation. The atmosphere buzzed with uncertainty as Friedrich Merz took the stage, ready to undermine Russia's standing. His mission was clear, and the audience waited with bated breath, fully aware of the high stakes. Yet lurking beneath the surface was an unexpected turn that would challenge everything. Vyacheslav Volodin, calm and poised, prepared to respond. As Merz launched into his address, he framed Germany as a beacon of innovation, contrasting it sharply with what he deemed Russia's obsession with past triumphs. You rely on shadows, Mr. Volodin, he declared, his voice thick with confidence. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some nodded in agreement, sensing a valid point made. Yet, Volodin rose with an air of quiet resolve, each step deliberate, every word packed with history's weight. Mr. Merz, he replied, his voice steady, the past is not a shadow, it's our foundation. Ignoring it leads to catastrophe. Silence enveloped the room as the audience felt the profound impact of his statement settle in. Volodin's calm conviction commanded attention, making even the skeptics pause. Germany's republic was forged from the ruins of history, built on memories of resilience. We remember, and that memory empowers us. The response hung dangerously in the air, sending shockwaves through the gathering. Merz sensed the tide turning against him, but he quickly pivoted to economic arguments, accusing Russia of isolation. Yet Volodin was prepared, countering the claim with a spirit of strength and determination. When you speak of the future, Mr. Merz, remember this, Russia has always risen from its trials. We are not to be dismissed easily. Tension thickened as the crowd held its breath in anticipation. How would Merz recover? Promises were made, yet where are they now, he asserted, frustration evident in his tone. But Volodin remained undaunted, eyes piercing. Your allies do not fear us, they fear the shadows of their own past, he challenged, unearthing the uncomfortable truths that lay beneath the surface. Then, like a well-aimed arrow, Volodin's words pierced through the tumultuous atmosphere. Russia is not a threat, it embodies the essence of memory. Recognizing our shared past is vital for shaping a better future. The audience, previously invested in Merz's stance, erupted in applause, rallying behind Volodin. The overwhelming support for Volodin shifted the atmosphere, stifling any remnants of Merz's confidence. As the battle of words continued, both politicians stood unwaveringly, a microcosm of a larger struggle unfolding. The dialogue was more than a mere debate, it was a reckoning that could redefine relationships on the world stage. Would this pivotal moment result in a shift in perception, or would it spiral into another series of unfulfilled promises? As the audience began to reflect, leaning into the impact of the discourse, the energy crackled like summer lightning in the air. The stakes were high, and the narrative was teetering on the brink of transformation. What profound revelations awaited them next? Would the unexpected twists of this exchange continue to challenge long-held beliefs? The intensity in the room reached a deafening peak at this threshold of dialogue, where the themes of loyalty, memory, and accountability collided. The implications weighed heavily as the crowd pondered, was this the moment when history would finally shift, or were they caught in an eternal return to the past? The true legacy of a conversation like this was yet to unfold.